Greetings, class. I wanted to give you a short introduction to how we're going to do critical thinking in this class. Now, this isn't a critical thinking class, but it's just there's some critical thinking skills that I want you to be able to master or at least get better at during the course of this course. So I wanted to introduce Module 2 by talking a little bit about this, and you had the pre-test right before this to kind of get a sense of some of the ways we're going to look at critical thinking. So that's the big learning outcome for this class. This learning outcome is to engage in critical thinking, and so that you can learn how to use it in this class. And the image that I've given you, questions, thinking, and then ideas are all part of the critical thinking in this class. So what is critical thinking? There are lots and lots of definitions of it. The information I'm giving you in this presentation is from Robert Ennis, The Nature of Critical Thinking, Outlines of Critical Thinking Dispositions and Abilities. And there are lots of resources. This is just where I've taken the information and adapted it for my class. So his definition of critical thinking is reasonable, reflective thinking focused on deciding what to believe or do. And that's what you'll be doing during the course of this course. Of course, there's certain knowledge and background knowledge that you acquire during the course, and you've been doing that in Module 1, where you've been looking at legal terminology, the legal system and how it works, how disputes are resolved in other ways, how the Constitution fits into a discussion of businesses and business conduct. You've already looked at the foundational information. But now we really want to talk about how you make decisions and how you decide how and whether a principle applies to a particular situation. And we'll especially be doing that in the next discussion assignments. The first assignments were just kind of previews, getting your orientation and looking at the issue of plagiarism, but now we're going to get assignments that are more in the meat of the course. So if I give credible reasons for a statement or position, I would be engaged in critical thinking, true or false. And I'll give you just a few seconds to answer that. And that would be true, just based on the definition that I've given you so far. So, how do I know whether I've given a credible reason? That's the question I want you to be asking yourself, and that's what we'll be talking about for the rest of the time for this presentation. There are three parts of whether you've given a credible reason and therefore whether you've engaged in critical thinking that we're going to focus on. There are others, as I said, there are many other elements, but we're focusing on three. 1, did I focus on the question? 2, did I apply and analyze ideas, arguments, and points of view? And then 3, did I evaluate my sources? Those are the three criteria that we're going to use to apply during the course of this course in terms of critical thinking. So again, we get back to what's critical thinking. Reasonable, reflective thinking focused on deciding what to believe or do. And I want you to keep that in mind, that that's what I'm going to be talking about here. So how many areas should I examine to know if I've given a credible reason and engaged in critical thinking? I'll give you a couple of seconds to answer that. I just talked about it. So this is a review. Three reasons, 3 areas. Focus on the questions, apply and analyze ideas, arguments, and points of view, and evaluate my sources. Those are the 3 areas we're going to focus on in this course. So, going to the first of the 3, did I focus on the questions? Just a little more information about that. So, in terms of whether you focused on the questions, you're going to identify or formulate a question and then keep the question and situation in mind. Now first, on the discussion assignments, mostly what I do is I give you the question. So it's just a matter for you of identifying what the question is or what the questions are, because there's usually more than one. And then second, keeping the question and situation in mind. Sometimes when you start doing research, you start looking up something, you start answering a question, you kind of lose a little bit of focus, but you want to come back and say, okay, wait a minute, what is the specific question? Or in a couple of the assignments, I put you in a scenario, and you want to keep that scenario or situation in mind. That's one of the first parts of critical thinking, is just making sure you've identified what it is you're going to be talking about and what the question is, what the issue is for that situation, for that assignment. So again, there are 3 criteria. We're going to take a look at the 3 areas. We're going to take a look at the second area. The first area was focusing on the questions. That was pretty quick. The second is, did I apply and analyze the ideas, arguments, and points of view? This is a big part of the meat of what I want you to do for critical thinking. So application and analysis, that's what you're going to be doing. And the picture I've given you is just someone who's looking at what could be a blood sample. They're going to analyze that and, apply whatever they know about what a blood sample is supposed to look like in order to engage in critical thinking and apply what they learned. So identifying conclusions is important. What is a conclusion? A conclusion is the reasoning that you get to at the end. Sometimes you start with a conclusion, which is more of a hypothesis. But it's like gathering all the evidence together and saying, okay, this is what that means. So you want to identify conclusions. You want to identify the reasons or premises. In the law cases, we talk about evidence. What's the evidence, or what are the facts that lead the court to that conclusion? What are the facts that lead you to that conclusion? And you want to be able to distinguish those. Distinguish a fact, which is something that can be proven to be, or can be independently verified or not, versus an opinion. And conclusions can be based on both, but you want to be able to distinguish them too. Because sometimes if you have an error in the facts, then you get to a conclusion that isn't valid because you didn't analyze the facts correctly. Then identify and handle irrelevance. And that's, again, it's a big issue when you start getting into the discussion assignments, because someone might bring up a point and you may say, well, I need to respond to that. But the point may not be directly relevant to what it is you're talking about. And you have to figure out, well, should I address what's irrelevant? Should I just say to the person, I don't see how it's relevant to what we're talking about? Be able to identify and handle those. And then determine the structure of an argument, maybe with a diagram. For our purposes, an argument is going to be statements supported by evidence or research. And then to be able to summarize the idea or the argument or the viewpoint. Those are all part of application and analysis. So, just a sample question, fact or opinion? This course is hard because it's online and a lot of work. Is that a fact or is it an opinion? And I'll give you a few seconds to answer that. That's an opinion. It's an opinion because the reason that's given, it says this course is hard. Okay, that's their opinion or conclusion that they've reached. Because it's online, that's true, that's verifiable, and a lot of work. That part's an opinion. What does a lot of work mean? A lot of work could mean reading the chapters for some people. A lot of work could mean having to get online and to remember to get online. So a lot of work is an opinion statement. So this is really an opinion. The course is hard because it's online. That's one fact. And a lot of work, that's an opinion. So that's just an example of what I want you to start doing as you're reading, and especially as you're commenting when you're reading other students' responses. Part of your critical thinking is to look at what someone else says and say to yourself, okay, is that relevant? Are they doing analysis? Is it based on facts? Is it based on opinion? What's the reasoning? That's what I want you to be doing in this class. So the third area then is, one is focusing on the questions, 2 is application analysis, and the third is evaluating sources. Information literacy is so important. You must use credible sources. So You look at the author's expertise, reputation, whether it agrees with other sources, the ability to give reasons, and then whether they have habits of care in their language. For example, are they just stating opinion? Are they very biased? Those are all things you look at. Now, one of the sources that we often use, I give you a question and then say, okay, find some information. Do you go to the library first? Well, hopefully you head in that direction. But many people start out getting on the net and just typing in some words, some search terms. And often the first thing that comes up is Wikipedia. Wikipedia is a source of information, but in this course, I expect you to evaluate that source. If you think you want to use Wikipedia, you'd better make sure that that article is supported by credible sources, so that if I look at that article, I can look to see what sources they use. And in fact, for you, what you can do is you can start with Wikipedia if you want, but look at the resources that they relied on to write that entry, and then go to their resources. Their resources are probably, if it's a decent article, are probably better for you than reading the Wikipedia version or relying on the Wikipedia version, because it is kind of crowdsourced. And although Wikipedia in general is accurate and it's okay to start there, for academic work, you want to have something other than Wikipedia. So anyway, those are examples of, the information literacy or credible sources. So how do I know whether I properly evaluated my sources? That's the question to you. A, the article was in Wikipedia. B, the author substantially deviated from everyone else in the field. C, the author provided credible reasons. D, the article was on the internet. E, the article consists mostly of unsupported opinions. So I'll give you a few seconds to think about the answer, or you can pause the video and think about the answer. Well, hopefully you answered C, that the author provided credible reasons. That's an example of how to properly evaluate the source. So, coming full circle, what is critical thinking? Reasonable, reflective thinking focused on deciding what to believe or do. My final questions to you are matching the item to the area of critical thinking. We looked at 3 areas. Those areas related to the focusing on the question, application analysis, and evaluating sources, or information literacy is also called. So, on the left column, look at the item. What does it match? Keep the question and situation in mind. Focus on the questions. Identify conclusions. Where does that fit on the right? Application and analysis. The author's expertise or reputation. Where does that fit? Evaluate sources. Determine the structure of an argument, possibly with a diagram. Well, that's kind of easy, but given what's left, application and analysis. Identify and handle irrelevance. Again, easy. Application and analysis. So, how do you know whether you've given a credible reason? Did you focus on the questions? Did you apply and analyze the ideas, arguments, and points of view? And did you evaluate your sources? And that's what we're going to focus on in this course. Thanks for listening, and I will see you online.